Welcome to Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull, a volunteer for Breathe California. Each week we try to present a show on air pollution, but usually it's prevention. One of the problems I find with our healthcare is that it's very focused on treating diseases instead of trying to prevent them. So Breathe California is out there trying to reduce the health risk from air pollution. So our guest today is Mike Proffitt, a close friend of mine who's a retired horticulturalist. If you don't have anything better to do, try saying that word 10 times. And he's going to talk about how plants help with air pollution and offer some suggestions for you. In my case, during the drought, had 5 plants die in my courtyard. So Mike's going to tell me what to plant there instead. And maybe you'll get some hints that are useful to you like that. So we'll be back in 30 seconds with Mike Proffitt.
The different therapeutic methods that we can help our very low socioeconomic status clients who have no alternatives, no anything, and there's still about 15 different resources we got out of this that if you have no resources, no service connection, you can still get aid.
That they are connected, one encourages the other, and that the process of change from backing off from the tobacco is the same as backing off from any other addictive drug.
Everyone can benefit from this training that we just were offered today. I would not take it back.
Welcome to Breathe California TV. Our show has historically been called Environmental Concerns, but with Breathe California as the lung health organization, almost all of our effort has gone into helping you control damage from wood smoke, smoking, and just breathing outdoors. If you're interested, go to our website under my name, and it has 13 different lung diseases that we help you cope with brochures or a staff member who will talk to you at 408-998-5865. So Mike, why don't you talk a little bit about your background? You're a great guy, but what's horticulture got to do with air quality?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you, Terry, for the invitation to speak today. And a little background on myself. I'm a Midwestern boy. I grew up in Kansas on a 2,000-acre wheat farm. Always have had plants on my mind and in my life. I went from the farm to Kansas State University and graduated in ornamental horticulture. From there, I traveled west to California, and for the last 45 years have worked at many different wholesale nurseries, larger wholesale nurseries, growing plants, and as I like to say, growing people to grow plants. So as I mentioned, plant material has always been a part of my life, and I really, really enjoy it and happy to share.
So you and I toured a spot down in, I guess it was Carson, California.
That's correct.
And it's pretty astounding at the numbers that go into being commercial growers. You showed me an area where they were growing 250,000 poinsettias for Christmas. Pretty amazing stuff.
That is correct. And just recently, I also visited another grower here in Watsonville. Hydra Point is the name of the grower, where they were growing over 350,000 poinsettia plants. And it's quite the sight to see right before Christmas, all that red, and right before they ship the plants out to the stores.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing because the number of growers to get ready for the plant needs of 40 million Californians means that you're going to get those kind of numbers. Pretty astounding.
Yeah, and there's even other growers much larger than that, where they have acres and acres and acres of greenhouse full of poinsettias. And or if they're right after the poinsettias, they're getting ready for the spring rush. So they're filling them right back up with annuals or perennials and or other hardy plants.
So a pretty off the cuff question for you is, I saw a TV news show talking about how great it was for the Amazon forest to have the new president of Brazil. The old one had reinstituted policies that largely allowed cutting anywhere, any place. And the broadcaster says, this is great for climate change. Can you explain that, what that's all about?
Well, I would also like to compare that with our local, our state of California. I mean, if you go back into history and you look back into the 70s and 80s, there were all of these large programs, mostly in South America, where large acreages of trees were being felled and burnt and needlessly disposed of. And as we all know, plants equal better oxygen levels, better quality of oxygen for us all. But even here in California, not that we're doing it purposely, but year round now is fire season because it's warmer in the summer. It's not in the last several years, of course, that we've been in drought conditions. The forests are much more tender towards having a fire in them. Now, many would say, hey, that's a natural event. Forests need to burn so they can replenish themselves. And I'm all about that. Yes, I agree with that. However, when there's hundreds of thousands of acres of forest land that's being swept away by fire, by winds, it impacts the amount of photosynthesis that can happen, and it takes away fresh air.
So your point's well taken. Let's talk a little bit about what you just referred to. We have this weird system where plants grow and release oxygen because they think it's waste. And you could say the same thing about humans, where we burn carbon and it gets dumped in the air as waste.
That's very correct. And, you know, this photosynthesis cycle is, it's interesting. I mean, we just have witnessed going back a little bit. We've got over 8 billion people now in the world. And it's taken only 11 and a half years to go from 7 billion to 8 billion. Now, the forecasters are saying it's going to take another 15 years to go from 8 to 9. So it's stretching it out a little bit. But right now, we're losing the battle because there has to be a balance between the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. And we need to make sure that we do everything we can to replant the world with more green plant materials. You know, going back to the fires in California, they don't just walk away from those every year. There's actually a nursery called Cal Forest, which is up in Etna, California. They specifically grow trees for replenishment of forests that have been burnt. It's not only just for the state of California, but surrounding states such as Oregon, Washington, Idaho, etc., Utah. And they grow approximately up to 30 million trees a year for that replenishment. And it's quite the operation, very large, very sophisticated, and very quick in return. They want to make sure they get those trees out there. I bring this up because once those hundreds of thousands of acres are burnt, we're taking away a mature trees in this case, and replenishing it with about a 14 to 18 inch seedling, which has much less potential for oxygen exchange with carbon dioxide. So we're actually going backwards. We're not going forwards because it will take many, many years for that tree to mature and get up into a sizable amount of oxygen for us to aid our environment with.
So I've been involved with a group in San Jose called Our City Forest. And we went to our county supervisors and doubled the money staff was proposing for planting trees. And got similar commitments from City of San Jose. Do you think those are useful? That clearly it's not very helpful compared to the tree that originally was planted. But are we gaining on it?
Absolutely. Yes is the answer. When you go out and try to reestablish any plant, it's great for the environment. Recently, my wife is very much involved with the National Association of Realtors. And in the year 2022, they made a commitment as a group to grow one tree for every member. There was 1.6 million realtors in the United States at that time. So they lived up to their word and they planted over 1.6 million additional trees somewhere in the United States. Is that enough? I don't think so, but it is a proper step to be taken.
So let's expand on that. You know, you used to live in Southern California. How many trees do you think we'd need to have an impact on Southern California's smog problems?
Oh, not being a scientist, I would really just be throwing a number out there. Let's just look at it in reality. The surrounding mountains in Southern California, which have plenty of pine and plenty of different species in them, as well as if you go out even out into the palm deserts where there's lots of palm trees and fruit trees, massive acreages in used to be in Orange County. They used to have a lot of fruit trees, of course, oranges and citrus. With those amounts of vegetation being grown in tree form, it still was not enough to stay up with the pollution rates that were going on. And thank goodness that the state and national people went out and demanded that air pollution be looked at, be resolved, put in different systems to take advantage of it, whether it be on automobiles or whatever it may have to help lower pollution rates.
So we're going to take a break right now, but Mike Proffitt's going to be back to discuss what kind of plants you want in your house, in outside in your courtyards, and maybe some plants that you might want to avoid due to poisons or other things. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds with Mike.
My name is Rene Montez. I've been using the CPAP machine, I would guess 10 years. I got so accustomed to it, I don't go anywhere without it. I take it with me everywhere. From the moment I put it on, I thought it was the greatest thing because the breathing was a lot easier. And after using it for a couple nights, I felt a lot of energy. Breathe California is fabulous.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull, been doing our TV show Environmental Concerns for the last 30 years. Our guest today is Mike Proffitt, an expert on plants. I probably ought to say you're a horticulturalist, but you're beyond needing a resume with that on it anymore.
Well,
we were talking at one point about forest fires, and I think that's particularly significant because it's increased so much as an air pollution problem in our state. And you're all used to knowing that LA Southern California has severe air quality problems, but it may surprise you that the worst air quality in the United States is Bakersfield. and the second worst is Fresno. I went on a trip recently to go look at a new national monument where I went from the coast over the hills into San Joaquin Valley, and I was astounded at how black the air was there. LA still in the ballpark, it's third, but we desperately need to take on our air quality problems. So you got any plants in general that are good for controlling air pollution? Certainly getting carbon out of the air is a big one.
Well, again, every plant that we can plant is valuable for helping remediate any kind of pollution. I agree with you. I used to travel up and down the Central Valley in Bakersfield, Fresno, all up and down 99 is very, very, can be very, very polluted. Some of that is not necessarily the same pollution as in Los Angeles, because Los Angeles, of course, with millions of people, have more air pollution due to automobiles, et cetera. A lot of the pollution that is actually in the air in Bakersfield and Fresno comes from agriculture itself, meaning that when it is nut harvest time and they're picking almonds or picking whatever it may be, they have to shake these trees. And when you shake a tree, it's like a dust storm going off. So there's a lot of dust in the air, et cetera, but it still needs to be cleaned up.
So let me dive in here and get my cheap shots in. Just to reinforce your point, 30% of the energy use in California is pumping water around. One of the systems, Shasta's Dam, doesn't deliver any water outside of the Central Valley. The California system does pump water all the way to San Diego, but disgustingly, it's all being pumped with diesel pumps, which are absolutely terrible. I always call them the devil incarnate of air pollution, because diesel fuel is filled with so many different pollutants. So I just wanted to say you were really on point there. So let me ask you a question that relates maybe to the first half of this conversation. We might have 20 million Christmas trees. Should we be buying natural ones that are smaller and then going someplace to plant them, or getting artificial ones, or is it still okay to buy a cut tree?
Well, I think every individual has the taste that they like to do. What is best, I think that again comes down to your economic needs, what you like the best. Do you like the smell in your home of a fresh cut tree? And whether that be as you're going out yourself and cutting it, or you're going to a retail store to pick out a tree. Everyone fits a need for individuals and individual families. I know I probably shouldn't really admit to this, but the last 8 years, I believe I have had an artificial Christmas tree in my home. Not because I necessarily 100% want that, but because of my travel schedules and where I go with my family, et cetera, I feel it's a safer tree to have. It's easier to set up, it's easier to put down, it fits my time frame better. Where other people may sit there and say, I like to have my family event to go out to a Christmas tree farm and cut it down. My daughter and her family do this for every year for the last 5 years. It becomes an event. And
the point is really well taken there. My two daughters who don't live with me do the same thing. Fortunately, they live with each other, and it's just fun for them to go do it and remember what they used to do with mom and dad.
And aesthetically, it's what they want. It's what they want to breathe. It helps. Your point on what trees are best for cleaning the air. Again, I'm not a scientist. I have not studied this. any tree will help, any plant will help, whether it be a small marigold in the backyard, or if you go out and plant a sequoia tree in your backyard, eventually both will be helping clean air, and taking bad gases will help filter the smog, whether it be dust particles or gas particles. Another thing photosynthesis does, and plant material does, is it helps cool the temperatures around us, whether that be through the transpiration, that process that is doing, that plant is doing, or whether it be making shade, more shade on your home, or in the playgrounds, or whatever it may be. It helps cool the surroundings, which also I think is a very, very valuable item that plant material can do.
Well, again, to reinforce your good point, studies have shown that the temperature in natural areas outside of California cities are 10 degrees cooler. And that's a major air quality issue, because we have two major air quality problems. One is particulates and the other is ozone. And ozone is not natural. It is formed by pollution, like sulfur dioxides and emissions from power plants and cars. And the hotter the temperature, the more ozone you get. And that stuff eats through your lungs in no time. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, when I used to live when I first moved from Kansas to California, I started in Fremont, California, and 5 years later was transferred to Southern California with the company I was working with, and talked with several people from the LA area when I first was down there. And the amount of pollution was so bad at that point in LA that they had the equivalent of smoking 1 pack of cigarettes a day just by living down there.
yeah.
It was disgusting.
So I promised everybody you'd talk about plants to avoid, whether because they're toxic or some other reason. Is this mostly an indoor issue?
Oh, it can be both indoor and outdoor. I again, not being an expert, but yeah, there are certain plants out there that if you eat enough of them, they could be harming to the physicality of your body, or a small child, or a pet. Going back to poinsettias, it is, quote, listed as a poisonous plant. Now, what bothers me when those labels are put on plant material is how much would a person or an animal have to consume to have any detrimental effects from that plant. And it fails to really recognize that. So I shake my head and say, if you go to your retail garden centers, most of which who are staffed by California certified nursery people, they would be the ones to ask and mention to them, oh, I have a small dog, or I have a rabbit as a pet. If they would eat a large amount of this plant, one, could they eat it? Would they be attracted to it? And if they would eat it, could it be harmful? To me, that is the best way of addressing that situation, because these people are trained professionals and have a better handle, in my opinion, as what they're carrying inside their nurseries.
Well, in our lifetime, I would say the average American has become more cynical. And one of the things that causes that is called greenwashing, where products claim to be good for the environment, but they're not. I've never felt that when I visited a garden store. Is there any risk of that? Do you feel anybody's overselling or lying about what plants can do?
I don't think they would be intentionally lying. I think there may be, if you're if you're 1 or 2 or 3 years into quote a field, and in this case, we're saying a retail horticultural nursery, you may not have the experience level that you quote can be an expert at answering that question, but they should be able to go to someone within that store, in that facility, to get a better answer, to get the correct answer. And as they gain more knowledge and more experience, they too then will learn.
So I sent you the names of 4 indoor plants that a website recommended.
Yep.
Because they would remove 87% of toxins.
Yep.
I'm just going to read the 4 of them, and I never even heard of the third one. Areca palms. They are not the 50-foot trees. They're a nice looking indoor plant. Peace lilies, chrysanthemums, and the one I never heard of was Dracaena.
Dracaenas.
Dracaena.
Yeah, and all 4 of these are yes, as you pointed out, Terry, that they're good quality plants. They do well inside. The spathiphyllum, which is the peace lily, excellent choice. Good oxygen producer, cleans the air of other toxins, other gases. Mums are used, as we all know, in flower arrangements and different things. And they also are a perennial. You can plant them in your garden and then cut the flowers to bring inside. So all 4 of these, the Areca palm, very good palm, very fast growing, very easily maintained. One article I did find was on the spathiphyllum. If you have a 1,500 square foot home, it would take about 10 to 15 plants to really have it generate enough oxygen that it's worthwhile.
So Mike, I've got orders to wrap up. Any 1-second sentence summary of what you want us to know?
Well, many people, whether it be gardening is a great way for us all to enjoy our lives, whether it be a hobby that you may have or a means of therapy. Many people do turn towards it for therapy, or nothing else, just to have a vegetable garden so you put more food on your table. It's a great way of always making better air for us all to breathe. And thank you again, Terry, for your invitation. And we'll see each other soon.
Thanks again, Mike. Appreciate your help.